guys, my name is Steve Gao, and in this video, I'm gonna show you how to make the perfect Texas-style brisket on a pellet grill. A lot of people say that a pellet grill brisket can never be as good as one that's cooked on an offset smoker, but I guarantee if you follow this recipe, 100%, if you serve this brisket up to any Texan, they are not gonna believe that it didn't come off an offset smoker. Starting with the trim, I'll go over it really briefly, but if you want a more in-depth tutorial, I'll link a video in the description section below. I'm slicing right through the cryovac bag of this choice grade Costco brisket and removing the very thinnest tip of the flat, so the brisket kind of cooks more evenly. Choice is okay, but prime is better, so get the highest quality brisket you can find. Now I'm slicing off a thin strip on both sides of the brisket and then carving down that hump on top of it so it lays a bit flatter in the smoker. I'm trimming down the fat cap to roughly 1/4 inch so it renders more evenly during the cook. And lastly, I'm removing that silver skin from the bottom of the brisket. It's that thin translucent layer of collagen, and if you don't remove it, it shrinks up faster than the meat shrinks, so it actually curls the brisket up and it can squeeze out a lot more moisture than is ideal. And after you're done trimming, the brisket should look something like this. That's a nice looking brisket. Now I'm slathering the brisket with soy sauce to help the rub stick and also add some flavor, and I'm seasoning it with Smoke Trail's barbecue brisket rub, which I will link in the description section below if you want to pick some up from Amazon. Alternatively, you can just use 50/50 coarse ground pepper and kosher salt. I designed this rub to go on very heavy for maximum flavor and texture, so it has the perfect balance of salt and pepper and a lot of other ingredients so that you get maximum texture, but you won't oversalt your brisket by going on super heavy. The sumac and various sizes of pepper granules in this rub will also help darken up the bark, which is important because it's a little bit harder to get dark bark on a pellet grill. It'll look something like this when it's all rubbed up properly. That's an even better looking brisket. Now I'm opening up my Pits and Spitz Maverick 1250 pellet grill, and I have 2 aluminum pans set up side by side on the bottom rack that I'm going to fill with warm water from the tap. In fact, I just removed my upper rack completely because this method doesn't require it. I wanted to develop a method where everyone, regardless of whether you have an upper rack in your pellet grill, could use this. So you don't need an upper rack, but you do need some kind of grill grate. Anything that looks kind of like this will do as long as it can fit a brisket. It just sits right on top of the water pans, and because we're using 2 water pans, we have all the support we need to hold its weight and the weight of the brisket. Now, normally on a pellet grill, you get a lot of hot, radiant heat coming up from below, and it usually burns the bottom of your brisket if you cook it on the bottom grate at too high of a temperature. But with this water pan setup, we're deflecting all of that heat, so we just get nice, gentle, convective heat hitting the top of the brisket, rendering that fat cap, darkening up the bark just like an offset smoker. Just make sure the water pans are big enough so that the point and the flat aren't overhanging the edges. We want to keep the brisket within the footprint of the water pan so they're protected from that harsh heat coming from below. Now I'm setting the Maverick to as low as it can go so I get as much smoke as humanly possible, and I'm smoking it low and slow for 4 hours. This is going to give the brisket a nice base coat of smoke before we increase the temperature. Now every hour or so, I'm checking on the brisket and spritzing it with equal parts water, apple cider vinegar, and soy sauce. Pellet grills run with forced air coming from the fan through the burn pot and up into the cook chamber, so it tends to dry out the surface of meat really quickly. So if you check on your meat every hour, you'll notice that it's probably going to be completely bone dry during the first portion of the cook before the meat has had a chance to start getting up in temperature and sweating out its own internal moisture and kind of self-basting itself. So it's important to spritz it every hour or so the surface stays moist and smoke sticks to it much better. It also adds flavor, and according to top Texas pitmasters like Aaron Franklin, if you spray down the tip of the flat and the point with enough water, it can actually slow them down a little bit so they can cook more evenly with the rest of the brisket. Now, after 4 hours of low smoke, I'm adding a secondary smoke source. You can use a pellet tube or a tray like this one. This is an amazing pellet tray. Alternatively, some smokers like this Maverick 1250 already have a secondary smoke source. The Maverick has something called a smoke cage, which sits next to the burn pot. I'm filling it with charcoal and wood chunks right now, and then I'm placing it over the burn pot to light it, and then once it is lit and on fire, I place it beside the burn pot. It'll now sit there and smolder, and all the forced air from the fan in the burn pot will keep it burning for as long as you add chunks of wood and charcoal every 30 to 40 minutes or so, and it provides a ton of smoke flavor. But again, you can also just use a pellet tube or tray for extra smoke. I'm now increasing the temperatures to 300 degrees on the Maverick. At this temperature, the pellets in the burn pot are going to burn extremely cleanly and produce almost no smoke. So that's why it's so important to have that secondary smoke source. Otherwise, our brisket is going to turn out reddish and a little bit dark, but we're never gonna get that jet black meteoric bark. Now, every hour or so, make sure you are continuing to spritz the brisket. Don't be afraid to really hammer the spritz on the tip of the flat and really soak it. It dries out really easily and it needs all the help it can get. And also, at this point of the cook, every hour or so, I'm also rotating the brisket around so the flat is facing the opposite direction. On most pellet grills, there's hot and cold spots, so this just helps the brisket cook a little bit more evenly. At around the 8 to 10 hour mark in the cook, your brisket should reach 170 degrees internal, and you'll notice a lot of juices have pooled up on it and are dripping into the pans below. That means the brisket has lost enough internal moisture that we can now wrap it in a foil boat. To do that, just place 2 sheets of wide aluminum foil over top of each other like a giant plus sign, then crumple up the edges outward to create a little boat for the brisket to sit in. I like to use the excess foil on the flat end of the brisket to curl it up over the very tip of the flat so it's completely protected from the heat and the dryness of the smoker, because again, the tip of the flat tends to dry out really easily, so we want to help it as much as possible. Then the brisket goes back on the smoker for another few hours. No more spritzing at this point, but you'll still want to rotate it every hour or so. And I say no spritzing because at this point, we are relying on all of that top-down convective heat at 300 degrees to really render the fat cap. So we get that nice thin layer of caramel-colored rendered fat that tastes really sticky and sweet. If we don't have enough heat getting to the top of it, or if we lower the temperature by spritzing it for the whole cook, then we're gonna have a lot of unrendered white fat on the fat cap. After a few hours of cooking, you'll notice there's a thin layer of juices in the bottom of the boat that are braising the brisket and helping it to cook from the bottom up. That's what we wanna see. We wrapped it at 170, so there shouldn't be a ton of juices because we dehydrated the brisket a little bit before putting it in the foil boat. If there are a lot of juices and the boat is full or overflowing, then remove some of them so there's just a thin layer at the bottom. Otherwise, you run the risk of over braising the brisket and making it taste kind of pot roasty. Now, 11 to 13 hours into the cook, the brisket will start to get really tender when you probe into it, and it should be at least 195 degrees internal everywhere you probe. If it's 200 in the point and it's 180 in the flat, that's okay. Just keep going until that flat is at least 195. The point can take that extra heat, and if it's a little bit overcooked, it might even taste better as a result. And after it hits at least 195 everywhere I probe, I'm prepping 3 sheets of heavy-duty aluminum foil in a kind of plus sign format with some beef tallow, clarified butter, and a bit of soy sauce piled on the middle of it. The brisket gets plopped down right over those ingredients, and now I'm wrapping it tightly so it's fully sealed in foil. I also like to put 1 more piece of foil underneath it and curl up the edges just in case it leaks. Now it's going in my holding oven at 150 degrees Fahrenheit for the next 18 to 20 hours until lunch or dinner the next day, depending on how you time your cook. Now, 2 quick tips that are very important. Should you rest your brisket down before putting it in your holding device? I personally don't. If I pull my brisket at 195 degrees, it's still a little bit undercooked at that temperature. So the long hold and that slow rest down period in the holding device is gonna finish the brisket perfectly. However, if you're not as attentive and you kind of miss the mark and your brisket is probing 200, 203, 205 everywhere you probe, it's very tender. And if you take cotton gloves with nitrile gloves over top of them and you put your fingers underneath the brisket and poke your fingers up and they go into the muscle fibers, so the muscle fibers kind of pull apart and let your fingers in easily, and there's no bounce back or pushback at all, then the brisket is, for all intents and purposes, done at that point, and you should in fact rest your brisket down for at least 1 to 2 hours before it goes in the holding oven at 150. Second tip, how do you hold your brisket if you don't have a holding oven like I do? Well, the easiest way is you can use just a sous vide bag. So just put your brisket in a sous vide bag and use a sous vide machine to hold it at 150 for 18 hours. You can use your oven. A lot of ovens can be calibrated down in temperature so that they can hold at 150. And I've also used an electric smoker that can go down to 150. Some pellet grills can go down to 150, although not many of them. I've also heard from viewers that they use turkey roasters or slow cookers that can go down to a consistent 150 in temperature. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. The one guaranteed way to ensure that your holding device is 100% holding at 150 is take a pan of water, put it in the holding device at 150 for at least 2 hours, and then temp it and see what the temperature is. If it's 170, 180, then that's way too high. If it's around 145 to 155 after 2 hours, then that's perfect. You know that your brisket is going to be holding at that temperature for as long as you put it in that holding device. So make sure you do that one test before you just rely on anything, because if you just throw your brisket into a turkey roaster and put it to 150, it could be way off and it could way overcook your brisket or not hold it at a food safe temperature at all. Now we're gonna slice into this brisket, but before we do that, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, Pitts and Spitz. Pitts and Spitz is a made in Texas manufacturer of super high quality offset smokers, pellet grills, charcoal smokers, and much more. They sent me this Maverick 1250 pellet grill that I've been using in this video, and I've been using it pretty much every week to make the best briskets I've ever made on a pellet grill. With the optional smoke cage attachment that you saw me use in this video, the Maverick allows me to make offset quality briskets on a pellet grill, which is something I never thought I'd be saying, but with this particular method, and especially with this smoker, I'm able to get amazing results. The other thing I really appreciate about this pellet grill is how solidly built it is. It's fully welded, it's beefy, it's got really thick steel that retains a lot of heat when it gets up to temperature, and it results in more even cooking. It also has a fully slide out bottom and top rack, which is a super awesome feature, and it makes cooking much easier. This thing is an absolute beast, and I highly recommend it if you're looking for a pellet grill with quality that you can pass down to your kids and performance that knocks cheaper pellet grills out of the park. I'll put a link to the Maverick as well as the smoke cage in the description section below for you guys to check it out. All right, let's slice this brisket up. The next day, just before dinner, I'm removing my brisket from the holding oven and I'm slicing it up. I like to slice it right down the middle first, and if I'm right in front of the family or friends at the dinner table, I show everyone at the dinner table just how juicy it is. Then I coat the exposed meat with fat from the board to prevent it from oxidizing, and then I start slicing into the point. Starting with the very edge, that first slice gets chunked up into burnt ends. Then I'm starting to make my point slices. If the brisket has some resistance and the point is more like a prime rib in texture, it's got some tug to it, I'm gonna make thinner slices. If it's tearing apart and it's super gooey and soft, but it's tearing as my knife blade goes in and out of it, I'll switch gears and I'll make really thick slices. And once I'm through to the other side, that last slice gets chunked up into more burnt ends. Moving on to the flat, I start slicing the exposed end first, and then I move my way and make thin slices if the flat is tougher, and I make thicker slices if they're kind of falling apart and they're really overcooked. Your slices may bend over on your finger or they may not. It's not necessarily an indication of how good the brisket is. I find briskets with a kind of firmer texture that are less cooked actually have a beefier kind of prime ribby type flavor, and that natural beef flavor isn't totally wiped out from overcooking the brisket. And with that long hold, you can get slightly less cooked brisket that still has that beefy flavor, and it can still pull apart quite easily. And that texture also holds up a lot better for leftovers and reheating the brisket because it's not super fall apart and overcooked. On the other end of the spectrum, the brisket can be more crumbly and really gelatinous and have this really gooey mouthfeel, and that's the texture that most barbecue joints aim for. I think there's a very fine line between that perfect texture and overcooked though. If you're going for that texture, it's very easy to overcook your brisket and get kind of that pot roasty, dry, crumbly mouthfeel. But if you do it perfectly, you can get that really luxurious mouthfeel. Everything is still super juicy, it's sticky, it's just amazing, but it's hard to find that kind of sweet spot. So there's a spectrum of what good brisket can be, and as long as it's not inedibly tough or super fall apart, crumbly, and dry to the point where it tastes like beef jerky, then your family and friends that you serve it to are gonna be amazed by it. So don't sweat the details too much. Even if it's not 100% up to the standard of what you think a perfect brisket should be, it's not gonna matter to a lot of people that are eating it as long as it's not too tough and as long as it's not too dry. Please like and subscribe if you found this video helpful, and until next time, happy smoking.